Hello, Internet. My name is Ryan Ingram, and today, this live stream, we are going to talk about how to buy your first rental property. So I'm really pumped about this. The past few live sessions that we've done have been pretty fun, and there have been some phenomenal conversations that have come from it. So whenever you feel like it, go ahead and post your comments in the chat. I don't mind taking my name down off that because you already know who I am. So if you can hear me okay, please let me know. And if you can see me all right, please let me know. I've got a real fancy microphone here now. So I'm pretty sure that this thing is working, but I don't have, on this StreamYard app, I don't have any sort of microphone levels that show if I can be heard or not. So that's the only housekeeping thing that I have. And a lot of the questions that I have been receiving over the past few weeks have been how to get started in real estate investing, how to figure out if a property is a good purchase or not, how to figure out if an area is a good location to kind of commit to long term, because there are tons of different ways to get started in real estate investing. But at the end of the day, the biggest thing is just making sure that you have a long-term perspective. So whenever you are investing in properties, make sure that you are thinking about the implications of that and kind of extrapolating out all of your thoughts over the next 30, 40 years. That's my preference. I'm a buy and hold investor. I don't do any flipping or Airbnb, anything like that. So whenever I purchase a property, I'm committing to one particular area and how I can have the best possible impact on that community over a long-term period. So that's the first part, making sure that you have just the long-term view of it. And really, I would encourage everybody, I think the first step out of 5 that I'm going to share, the first one is just figuring out why. Why do you even want to get started in real estate investing? Because like I mentioned, I don't do any flips. I don't do any sort of creative things like Airbnb or any sort of short-term rentals. I'm specifically a buy and hold investor in cash flowing rental properties. And the reason for that is my why is ultimately figuring out how to make enough passive income on a monthly basis, how to have enough cash flow in order to pay for all of my family's monthly expenses and ultimately all of my brother and I's children, paying for our college. So we're not trying to make a lot of money quickly. We're not trying to be a phenomenal host in Airbnb or anything like that. So we've got our first question, which is really exciting. Righteous Realtor. How do you get business credit to start building your portfolio? This is a really interesting question, and I don't know much about it, but I do know that when it comes to business credit, you can apply for like the Dun and Bradstreet, I think is the name of it, D&B number. You can do all the right things so that people, the creditor or whatever type of database information reporting people know that you're a real business. But when it comes to working with local banks to build business credit, I think the biggest thing that you can do is have a business that actually, makes money and pays monthly bills. So whenever you actually form a business and get a decent amount of cash flow from that, you build up a track record, and then just generating for like cash flow, the banks are able to look at that and then figure out, how much credit they are willing to extend to you based on your monthly cash flow. And then after the first bank extends credit to you, you can, I guess, consider yourself to officially have business credit. I don't know much about, I know I've watched a lot of videos on how to build your business credit. And some of the things that I've watched on that, again, this is the area that I'm really unfamiliar with, but it almost seems like it precedes actually having a business that makes money. I'm not sure about that, but when I first started investing in real estate, we did everything from our personal names and off our personal income until we had 2 years of tax returns from the rental property business's portfolio. So once we were able to So what I would do is we would buy properties, and then we would either quit claim deed or do like a quit claim transfer over to an LLC name so that the asset is in the name of the LLC. We did that with our first property, but we purchased that in cash. So there wasn't any of this like due on sale clause. And then once we deeded it over to the LLC, it became an asset of the LLC, and all of the cash flow and all of the expenses became business expenses. But the banks weren't comfortable lending based on, the business's assets until we had 2 years worth of tax returns. Prior to that, it was all based on our personal income. I hope that helps, Righteous Realtor. Does your end buyer always have to be a cash buyer? Does your end buyer always have to be a cash buyer? Ant LB, I'm a little bit confused by your question. Your end buyer. Are you trying to wholesale properties? What you doing? If you wouldn't mind just talking about that in a little bit more detail. I'm a cash buyer. And when I say cash, I think there's a little bit of confusion based on what I've said on the channel. So I would like to clear. I'm going to kind of piggyback off your question, and I'm going to say that when I write offers, I generally do 2 weeks because that seems to be the time that the title company can most certainly get the title search back. And then I also say cash, but I'm not necessarily taking money out of my bank account to pay for that. I'm raising the money via friends and family with private investors, and they are wiring the money over to the title company in order to fund that transaction. So, okay. So Aunt LB responded, yes, he's talking about wholesaling. I don't know. I've never wholesaled any properties. I'm not a wholesaler. I've purchased tons of properties from wholesalers, and your end buyer doesn't have to be cash. Wholesaling is a real gray area. So wholesaling, you really just get a property under contract, and then you sell the contract to someone else. So whatever your contract says the closing date should be, if you've got yourself 60, 90 days of a closing window, then you could probably sell the contract to somebody who is using bank financing or some sort of like traditional financing option. But I think wholesales are mainly cash deals just because of the contract date and how quickly you have to move. And I'm not going to say that you're going under the table or doing anything shady when you're wholesaling, but it's generally, I don't know, as much questions as banks always have. Some banks even, they want too much information. So I don't think many banks would be comfortable lending you money when the purchase agreement has someone else's name on it. I guess you would then, as a wholesaler, you would create a new contract with the person that you're selling the contract to, and maybe you could take that to a bank. I don't know. I'm not a wholesaler, and I don't really know much about that. Actually, because I don't know anything about that, let me go ahead and put up this fun little banner that says I don't know what I'm talking about. Oh, man. Hey, Lewis. Have you done many flips? No, I have done 0 flips. So when we first got started into real estate investing, and I just mentioned I'm going to try to go over 5 things that you need to do in order to buy your first rental property. And the first thing is just creating your why, your big vision as to why you even want to get started in real estate investing to begin with, because there's just so many different nuanced variables of real estate investing. There's tons of different avenues that you could go. So you really want to stay focused and figure out what you want to do. And my why has always been the cash flow aspect. So my brother and I originally started in this, and we were just trying to figure out how in the world, because between the two of us, we're about to have 7 kids, and 5 of them are going to be in college at the same time. So when we were talking once, we were trying to figure out how in the world we would pay for all of our kids' college at once. And ultimately, real estate seemed to be a phenomenal option because the appreciation, the principal pay down, the cash flow, and all the tax benefits. So at that point, we decided that we were going to start building up our monthly cash flow. And we were fortunate and blessed to both have decent W-2 jobs. And whenever we got started in this, especially the market that we're at, where our rental properties are $35, $45, $50,000, we were able to qualify for enough of those. For the first 2 years, we were able to use our personal income, personal credit in order to get loans on these properties. So flipping seemed to be more like another job rather than residual income. So I'm not opposed to flipping. We're considering selling a few properties at the moment just because there's so much equity in them. But I think what we're going to do is just refinance them instead, because I made a little vow to myself whenever I first left law enforcement and got into insurance and real estate, and that's that I would never do anything that only paid me once, and flipping breaks that rule. This is a good question. About how much money would you say is needed to start buying and holding properties? Did you start with an FHA loan? Maybe. I guess that really depends on when you would technically say that I started real estate investing. So the first property that I purchased, I definitely used an FHA loan on that. But I was 23 and I bought a property that was never intended on being a rental. It wasn't a rental. I sold it, but I had a roommate and he paid half of the mortgage. So I kind of accidentally house hacked when I was 23, and I started that with an FHA loan. Ultimately, I sold that property, and between the principal pay down, because I very aggressively paid down the mortgage on that while he was paying half the mortgage, I was following Dave Ramsey's plan to a T at that point. So when I was 24, I had zero debt and I only had the house. So any extra money that I made, I put it towards the house. So when I sold that, that resulted in about 30 grand, I believe. I'm a little bit fuzzy on these numbers because it was so long ago. I guess it was just like 5 or 6 years ago. But that was 30 grand. And then when I got married, my wife and I bought 17 acres and built a house, and we sold that for about 45 grand more than it cost us to build, minus the realtor fees and whatnot. I think we ultimately netted about 25 grand from that as well. And that was right before I moved to Ohio. So when my brother and I started, between the two of us, I think we put about $120,000 into our business to start acquiring properties. But that's not, you can definitely get started with a lot less than that. I just, whenever I'm on this channel and I'm talking about over the past 3-4 years, we've acquired 80 plus properties. We did, but that statement also deserves some asterisks, right? Because when I got started working a W-2 job when I was 21, I saved 50% of my income the entire time. So in addition to the 55, 60 grand that I had from selling those two properties, I also had 60 or 70 grand in retirement accounts from working and saving the money the entire time. So we really started with a lot more money than what it sounds like when we talk about acquiring so many properties in a quick amount of time. But I would say, so long as you can actually, if you're going to get creative and you're going to do something like house hack, and if you house hack, you will be able to use an FHA loan. So you have to put very little money down. How much money you need to start, it really depends on how you're going to get into your first deal and what type of shape that property is in. Because of this, I wouldn't recommend that you start with a property that needs a great deal of work, because then you would have to somehow raise the capital or save up the money in order to do the repairs. I'm not so sure any lenders would lend on something where you had no experience in and there was a great deal of work required. And if you did find a bank that was willing to lend on that, they would probably be very expensive. So I would shy away from that. So if you are buying a property that is in great shape and you have a decent insurance policy, there's no deferred maintenance, the mechanicals on the property are newer, the roof is new, there's nothing wrong with the property. And if you bought an insurance policy where if something did go wrong, there's a large chance that it'd be covered under the insurance policy, then I think it would be completely reasonable to start with like 10 or 15,000. At the same time, I know of people that have started with a lot less, but they took on a great deal of risk. And, they really focused in on creative financing, finding older real estate investors that just wanted to start offloading their property, but still wanted the, monthly income but a little bit less in exchange for the fact that they don't have to do or deal with any of the residents or any of the maintenance issues anymore, then you're taking on a great deal of risk, because in the interim of collecting the cash flow and building up reserve, you might not have the reserves to take care of any issues. But that's risk, and there's this whole risk and reward transfer. So as much as I'd love to give you an exact dollar amount of how much you need to start, I don't really think that's possible, because I think it really depends on how you're going to get started in real estate investing, how much risk you're willing to take, and your overall plan. Hey, Arion, you're back in the house. Thanks, man. This is exciting. Thanks. No problem. JJ from New York City. I appreciate it, man. And hey, last week on this live stream, you kept telling me that I never answered your question, and that was not on purpose. So what's up, man? What's your question? Do you have one? If so, type it. I'm really looking forward to answering it and figuring out what in the world I missed last week. All right, Arion helped me out with this wholesaling question. Usually the sellers in a time crunch, if they could wait for traditional financing, they would just list with a realtor majority of the time. For sure. Yeah, wholesaling. I don't know. I've bought too many properties from wholesalers to ever say anything bad about wholesaling. But at the end of the day, I would say with the proper education, and if time is in your favor, I definitely think listing with a realtor is probably better for the person that owns the property. Oh, man. What's good? For the Mastermind group, seekwisdom.com/join, seek-wisdom.com/join. For the Mastermind group, what are you seeking in potential candidates beside the $300 monthly fee? I mean, it really just depends on the individual. There's no like set checklist that I have to go over. It's really just making sure that everybody is committed. And I really just want to make sure that it's a positive fit for the individual. I know what I have to offer. I know what I'm capable of helping people do. I know who's currently in the group, and I know what their experiences in life are. So, I mean, as much as I want to accept everybody, you're right. There's definitely going to be a little bit of screening. I don't know what the screening is, but ultimately it really just comes down to what I like, where you're at in life, and figuring out if you're a good fit. There's no right or wrong. I mean, it's definitely a conversation. I'm looking to spend probably 30 minutes to an hour with all the people that apply, just to figure out where you're at and figure out if I actually know enough to really help you. Because if you're trying to start a business, in lawn care, man, I would love to act like I have the ability to help you, but it might be a stretch. But if you want to like get started in building a portfolio, then that's probably something that myself and everybody in the group could really help you with. So it's fun, man. I'm having so much fun. I'm really feeling blessed and super appreciated and loved by all you guys at the moment. So thank you for that. Yeah, apply, see what happens. Let's talk about it. Arion with some phenomenal questions. Could you elaborate on the structure of paying interest only for the first couple of years, then going to amortized? For sure. So whenever we structure paying interest only to private investors, we regularly borrow money from friends and family for first position mortgages at 10 and 12%. Those are interest only for the first few years. And then at that point, we group all of these together for convenience sake, not because there's any really real benefit in doing so. And we refinance them all at the same time. Right now, we are in the process of refinancing 36 properties, and we're going to pay back the friends and family on the first position. So the 36 property refinance is going to take over the first position mortgage. And at that time, hopefully, our investors that we've been paying 10 and 12% to for the past 12 to 36 months will want to continue getting their 10 and 12% and allow us to do it again. So then we would go out and buy more properties, probably around 36, and just really keep it going that way. So it's kind of almost like a sleight of hand of just the 10 to 12% interest only payments for the first few years is really enough to get us to acquire the property and rehab the property. And then once we have a product that is rented out and recently rehabbed, then we're able to go to a bank and say, look at this awesome property that we have. It's worth far more than we paid for it. We would like to refinance and potentially pull a little bit of money out. So in that time frame, we are paying friends and family 10 and 12%, which feels good to the soul because we are allowing people and helping people to make better returns than the stock market generally, and also the fact that it's secured. So the house isn't likely to disappear. And if it were to burn down or experience some sort of loss, then it would be covered by the insurance policy. So it's super secured, super lucrative. And then at that point, we refinance, pull some money out, meet the seasoning requirements of the lenders. Checking in. All right. Thanks. Good morning. I have $5,000 to get started in real estate investing. Do you recommend buying a live, rehab, rent property and then purchase the next property? Just curious on your thoughts on the best way to get started. For sure. I think that $5,000, if you can buy a property, if you could buy a property to live in, I don't know if house hacking is an option for you. I don't know if there's any units that you can rent out or bedrooms that you'd be willing to rent out in there. That would obviously alleviate the mortgage payment, and that would allow you to grow your $5,000 and the equity position that you have in the house. Obviously, it would be a better win if you are able to buy a property at a discount if it is distressed for any reason. And then if you're able to kind of rehab it or make it increase the value while you're living there, that would be a win. They call that sweat equity. So then potentially you would be able to increase your $5,000 a lot in that time. I would just want to make sure that you are not like limited to $5,000, because $5,000, it's a decent chunk of money, but it's probably less than the price of the roof, which is scary. And then depending on the down payment, you might spend all of your $5,000 just getting into the property. So I think when you are limited on the amount of money that you have, what I think before getting started in real estate investing, so I want to say two things here. I'm tripping myself up. My brain is giving me too many thoughts that I want to share with you. The two things that I want to share is you can most certainly get started in real estate investing with any amount of dollars. The closer you are to zero, the riskier it's going to be because of the inevitable issues that are going to arise where contractors might not finish the job appropriately and walk off with your money. Things might go wrong that's not covered by insurance. You could, have wear and tear on like water heaters and roofs and any sort of mechanicals that need to be replaced. When we're talking about an amount like $5,000, there's really not much extra meat left on the bone after you take care of one of those things. And then you just, starting with such a low amount of money, you just have to be prepared to take on an extraordinary amount of risk while you're attempting to generate something that's either more money or cash flow. So the second thing that I would want to highlight with someone that has $5,000 to get started is I would really be interested to kind of hone in on the fact of like, why do you only have $5,000? Are you experiencing you have an income problem? Are you not making enough at your W-2 job? Have you been spending too much? And I would really encourage people to not shy away from real estate investing because of a low amount of money. But as you are fixing your income, as you are learning how to provide more value, create more skills by like educating yourself on something that might be higher paid than what you're currently making, along and couple that with educating yourself more so about real estate investing and how to do it successfully. So if you only have $5,000, I definitely think that real estate investing is something that you should aspire to and something that you are capable of going ahead and getting started in. But I would also encourage you to really take the time to figure out how to make more money, how to save more money, fix your income problem, fix your spending problem, and really, really focus on making more money and saving more money so that you bring more to the table when it comes to real estate investing, and to kind of limit your exposure to things that could go wrong when you start real estate investing. A good friend of mine He moved up here to Ohio from, we met in North Carolina, but that's not where he moved up from. He moved up here from Alabama. And this past January, he had, I think, $100 to $300 to his name. And, he just kind of realized that all of the things that he was doing wasn't necessarily the right way to go about it. So we spent a bunch of time together, and he made all this effort was things that he accomplished himself. But in just changing the way that he thought and changed the way that he spent money and interacted with money, he now has a little over $15,000 in his bank account. And this is just in 9 months. So he was able to generate $15,000. And it's not like he's making boatloads of money. He is, I think he makes about $15 an hour. So it's a phenomenal feat. And he also started door dashing on nights and weekends. So just by changing and by going above and beyond so that he could bring in more income and limit his spending, he's been able to go from $100 to $300 in January to about $15,000 now, making $15 an hour. So it's not like he got anything for free or anyone gave him anything. This is a bunch of hard work that he put in. And he purchased a 4-unit apartment building where he is going to house hack it. And that is going to add an extra $1,000 per month to his monthly income after all the expenses. And he's not going to have to pay his rent anymore. So it's a win. So I would really heavily focus on those things when you have a low amount, or be prepared to take on an extraordinary amount of risk while you're trying to bring a very small amount of money to the table when it comes to real estate investing. How many properties in did you go from traditional banks to hard money loans? So I don't have any hard money loans, Lewis. I differentiate between hard money loans and private investors in the origination fees. So friends and family, they don't charge me. That's the way I'm kind of putting in this sweat equity. So I don't have any hard money loans. I've never paid any sort of points or origination for the private money loans. Those are the things that I find the deal. I take it to the individual that is going to purchase the first position mortgage at interest only, 10, 12%. And there's no points or fees associated with that, just the title company's recording and title search fees. So I did the first private money loan, probably 8 or 9 properties in. Before that, it was cash and traditional financing. I closed my first 2-family house hack last November. How do I go about getting my second deal? Man, it sounds like you're onto something. It sounds like you've educated yourself pretty well and you are making the right moves for sure. And I think you already know how to get your second deal. It might just be a matter of time. So I would really, all the things that I just said in response to Justine's, I would really focus on improving the value that you bring to the marketplace, trying to figure out how to make more money. If you're house hacking, you have probably already limited your expenses a great deal. Are there any areas where you could limit your expenses even more? Are there any areas that you can kind of sacrifice at the moment in order for more time to make more money? And then, if you are house hacking, especially a 2-family, then I take it you are already really educated in the real estate investing space. And it's probably now just a matter of time and being aggressively patient. So I think what you're saying, I think the sentiment behind this is, hey, I'm ready for my second deal. And you're getting a little bit impatient, which is definitely the right way to go about feeling. But at the same time, when I say aggressively patient, figure out all of the ways that you could make more money, spend less money, so that you could throw it into real estate investing. It's a long-term game. I guess you have a 30-year loan on your first one since you're house hacking it, which is great. So just think about the loan term. 30 years is a long time. So I'm really looking forward. I think you are awesome. My next neighbor is selling her property over 100K more than mine, although it's smaller. Should I think I have at least 100K in equity? Probably. Look at that, man. See? So is there any way that you could tap into that? So let's think about this out loud together. So if you potentially have $100,000 in equity, I'm not sure the overall property value, but there's two things that you could do to recapture the equity that you have in that property to get your second or third deal. So you could refinance the property and go off the appraised value and pull out like a lump sum of that. That would be, if you refinanced, you would be taking advantage of these low interest loans, and you would also be taking on long-term debt. So when you're taking on long-term debt, you have the ability to take advantage of the lump sum and slowly pay it back over an extended period. The second option that you have is doing a home equity line of credit. And the line of credit differs in that it is probably most likely going to be a second position mortgage on the property. So your first mortgage would stay intact, and then you would add this home equity line of credit that would probably be 75% the loan to value still, but it would be the difference between. So I don't know how to speak of this. So let's use $100,000 as an example, because that's super easy math. Let's say your first position loan is $50,000. So you have $50,000 of equity in the property. You could get a home equity line, probably 75%, maybe higher on like a local regional bank. There's one local credit union here that, depending on your credit score, they go up to 100% of the equity that you have in the home, which is crazy. But going back to this example where they're going to 75% loan to value, they would give you the difference. So you'd have a $25,000 line of credit in this example where the home is worth $100,000. Your first position loan is $50,000. You would be able to pull out a $25,000 home equity line of credit. And a home equity line of credit is very comparable to a credit card. So you only pay interest when you use that line of credit. So it's not like you are receiving a lump sum like the first position mortgage and you're slowly paying it back. You have the ability to go out and spend $25,000, and you only pay interest as you use that money. So then you would be able to get this $25,000 line of credit and use this in order to go out and put it as a down payment on the property, or acquire a property with different means and use the $25,000 as rehab money. The only caution I would say to using home equity lines of credit is lines of credit are a short-term debt vehicle. So if you are going to utilize those funds, just be cognizant of the fact that those might get called and they're short-term. So 12, 24 months, make sure you could pay back the money within that time frame. So if you use this money as a down payment, then it should be top of mind for you to be paying that back aggressively on a monthly basis, so that 12 to 24 months from now, yes, you have the new property that you used the home equity line of credit for, but you want to pay down that $25,000 balance as quickly as possible, because the line of credit is short-term cash. And whenever you get enough equity in it, you can always refinance your first position mortgage to pay off the line of credit. So you could just keep that in your back pocket as well. I hope that all made sense. It's a kind of complex thing to explain on a live stream where you guys are asking questions, but I'm just staring at the camera. So I hope that made sense. Javon Parker. Nice. Happy to see you in here today, man. As a beginning investor, what is easier to focus on? Building an LLC structure to place your properties in, or get really good insurance? Keep up the good content. Keep up the good watching. You know, I'm an insurance man. Let me put my disclaimer back up here. So this is not, I mean, you definitely do you. This is one of those comments where it's a great question and we should talk about this, but this shouldn't at all be construed as advice to you. Definitely seek somebody who can go in deep with you on your personal situation and figure out the nuances. But if we're talking just broad strokes philosophy here, I think a lot of people jump the gun on the LLCs. If you have a decent insurance policy, let's say, so real quick, a tangent, liability coverage on your insurance policy. Never skim on that. Anytime you ever buy an insurance policy under any circumstances, take as much liability coverage as they will possibly give you. So if a policy offers $1 million of liability coverage, do not, under any circumstances, elect to get $100,000, $300,000, or $500,000 of liability coverage instead of the $1 million. And the reason I say this is on a large policy, the biggest I have seen the liability section ever change in annual premium is by about $150. So I don't know about you, but if I were to ever be in a lawsuit, I would be very angry at myself if I elected to get $300,000 worth of coverage instead of $1 million just to save $150 per year. That would be very silly. So there's that. So if you have an insurance policy that has an adequate amount of liability protection, then let's say you get sued for some reason. In order for your assets to be in jeopardy, the insurance policy either has to deny coverage, which if you met an independent insurance agent and actually did like a global picture of your asset situation, what all you had to lose, and actually sought to protect all of those things with the appropriate insurance policy, the chances of that happening are pretty slim. So if the claim or the lawsuit doesn't get denied by the insurance company, then in order for your assets to be in jeopardy, the liability limits on the insurance policy have to be exhausted before your personal assets get put in jeopardy. So if you have $1 million liability limit, that has to be exhausted before they then also go after your rental property. And unless you're out in California and you are buying a single family home that is worth like, several millions of dollars and it's 1,000 square foot, then I don't likely see you being in this position. So let me kind of put myself in this position. And if we have a $1 million, in theory, if we were to have like a $1 million liability limit on our insurance policy, if we were to have like a $5 million umbrella, then we would have to have done something negligent or horrible enough to justify upwards of a $5 million lawsuit before they then start requesting the $50,000 house that you purchase. So it kind of depends. Obviously, I know a lot about insurance. It's an area of expertise of mine, not to be confused with professional advice. So I definitely think that you can mitigate the majority of impending lawsuits. In my experience, I think, depending on most markets, you would be really hard pressed to exhaust your insurance liability limits prior to whoever's suing you settling for some amount. So when I've seen lawsuits go get filed on individuals, generally one of the first things the insurance company will do is attempt to settle the claim outside of court before any of this happens. And I don't know who is suing you, but there's probably a good chance that it gets paid out prior to being litigated to the point where you even have the ability to max out your insurance liability things. Now, back to the LLC part of the question. From an LLC perspective, you should definitely have your assets protected in an appropriate manner. But reflecting on the conversation that I had towards the beginning of this pandemic that we've been in, I had an individual approach me who had, I think it was like $5,000 or $10,000, and he was getting very worried about losing this somehow in the pandemic. And at the end of the day, it's $5,000 or $10,000. Like, how quickly would you be able to make that money? And I think it's human nature to want to protect what it is that we have. But in the grand scheme of things, we probably don't have as much to lose as we think we do. So I think it is kind of comical. Like, if you go into not the greatest of neighborhoods and you see tons of no trespassing signs everywhere, and then people that have more than the people that live in that area, it would be like, what are you protecting? What do you have that I could possibly want, right? So I think a lot of us accidentally become these people that are putting no trespassing private property signs way too prematurely. Because if you go over to the extraordinarily nice neighborhoods, these signs don't exist. But one would think that the people in the nicer neighborhoods have a lot more reason to put those signs up. So what's the difference? And I'm going to oversimplify this and say it's like abundance versus scarcity. Now, I'm not saying be so abundant that you think that you are never going to lose anything. That would be a bad deal. You definitely want to be smart about it. But when it comes to structuring assets inside of LLCs, I think as real estate investors, we often jump the gun and spend thousands of dollars in attorney fees and legal fees before we even hit the point where it would be appropriate for us to go to such extremes to form all these LLCs and trusts and whatnot to kind of shelter our assets. I hope that was helpful, Javon. What a rant that was. I think I missed the mark a lot on that. And I could see a lot of what I just said being broken up into tiny little clips that make no sense and are taken out of context. But I'm a paranoid person, so don't hate me too much. Love the channel, bro. How do you determine what needs to be fixed, replaced, or left alone on your rental properties? Thanks. If it looks pretty bad, I would probably fix it. I don't really believe in deferred maintenance. So anytime anything needs to be addressed, I do my best to do it. Here lately, the 3 crews that I have are pretty busy. So I'm a little bit self-conscious on not being able to get out there quick enough to fix some of the issues. But unfortunately, I'm to a point where I really need to bring on an additional crew or handy person to handle the smaller stuff that's coming in. And I know that maintenance requests always get worse whenever the seasons start to turn. So hopefully this is just a little bit of settling in, and maybe I don't necessarily need 4 crews yet. But the short answer to your question, to prevent me from going on another rant, is if you have any sort of maintenance that needs to be done, then I would probably go ahead and do it. I have an insurance client who has some properties in the area, and he's an out-of-state investor. He's one of the ones that I've mentioned that I think does a very good job at it. And he used to work on planes for a living. And in his industry, working on planes, he liked to replace things before they had the opportunity to fail, which we're all super thankful of, because nobody wants something to fail mid-flight. So he has a phenomenally detailed spreadsheet of the dates mechanicals were installed, the serial numbers, the lifespan of that mechanical. And he actually changes things out before it even has the opportunity to fail. And I do not do that. I change things out like water heaters and AC units and furnaces when they just stop working, or when it costs more to repair them than it does to replace them. Or if the repair is one of many things that looks like it's on its last leg in this mechanical. So for that, I'm definitely reactionary, and I would rather somebody go without heat for a little bit than replace it prior to it needing to be replaced. Different strokes for different folks. One of the reasons that real estate is so much fun. You can be as proactive or as reactionary as you would like, but please do not be the person that sacrifices the quality of their home for like $50 to $100 extra of cash flow per month. If you've got soffits hanging off, go ahead and do it. Go ahead and fix that. If you've got some gutters hanging off, go ahead and fix that, because that's going to create bigger problems later on. Miranda Diaz, thanks for being here with us, Ryan. No way, Miranda. Thank you for being here. Oh, if you don't know me, you think I'm being a cheese ball, but I'm being dead serious. Thanks for being here. That makes sense. You make sense. All right, I'm done. That was my last comment like that. I'm just having tons of fun. This is truly, I look forward to this all week. Part of me wants to start doing this on Monday as well, so I don't have to wait all week to do this. But then I think Monday is ill-spaced, because all the things that we get to talk about here on Friday, don't you need the whole weekend to digest them and act on them until you get to be here again? Monday is probably bad timing. What's good with you? Another good question. How did you gather your team of contractors for repairs? Do you use things like Home Advisors or Angie's List? Fortunately, no. So far, everything that I've done, all the crews that I've met have been word of mouth. It has been one person that I trust introduce me to another person that they deem to be trustworthy. And generally, the way that things have progressed for me is I have been able to use contractors for small things first. That I've seen them do it successfully. And then I slowly trust them with larger jobs. So there was only one time that I had no experience with an individual and hired them to rehab multiple properties, and that did not turn out well for me. So I still have my tail between my legs a little bit on that one, and I'm much more cautious about dealing with new people. And if you have the luxury to test out contractors on smaller jobs and see them complete it from start to finish with high quality, then I think that's the best case scenario. And it would be even better if something goes wrong on the small job. Either it breaks a little bit after they said that they fixed it, or if something was done poorly by one of the people that work for them. So one of the subs that they've used. Now, if you're lucky enough to have this happen on one of the small jobs that you use a contractor for, then you have the ability to watch how they respond to that. Do they come back and make it right and then say that'll be an extra $100, or do they just take care of it? Do they come out and fix it for no cost because they love to keep their pride of work very high? Those are the things you really want to look for as you're building this relationship. But my MO, what I prefer to do is I prefer to operate on a high level of trust, build a rapport with an individual. And then once that is built, I really don't ask for quotes or shop every little thing out. I know some investors who every time anything happens, they shop it out with multiple people. I'm not so sure that I want to do that. I get it. They are probably hedging their bets on being taken advantage of. And perhaps I'm just not jaded or experienced enough, and I'm operating out of a place of, you say, naivety. But I would prefer to say, hey, I trust you. Please go take care of this issue. And, so far for me, that has turned out well to stick to that. But as I scale this, as I build more or create a larger portfolio, I don't know how sustainable that model is. Okay, so this is the reason that you have $5,000. I think this is really serious, and I think this is very fair. And I say fair. I mean, I'm really sorry for all of these things. Definitely do something outside the box to be creative. Yeah, reach out to me. Send me an email if you want to talk about any sort of creative things or anything like that. But that is definitely kind of an ideal time to start rebuilding. I'm not too experienced in life. I haven't experienced the passing of anyone close to me yet. So I have no idea how I'm going to respond, or no idea how that's going to wreck my life. If I refinance my FHA loan to a conventional loan, could I get another FHA to buy another home and rent my primary one out? Let me read this question again and slow down just a little bit. If I refinance my FHA loan to a conventional loan, okay, got it. Could I get another FHA to buy another home? Yes. You actually don't necessarily need to refinance your first FHA loan to a conventional loan, unless I'm confused about what FHA is. If it's the low or no money down loan, then I think you can have 2 or 3 of those at one time. I have a friend in Arizona that has 3 rental properties plus his primary residence, and they are all the 5% down loans. So he put 5% down. He moved out after a year or so and then purchased another one and turned the previous home that he lived in into a rental. I think I answered that question. You're on to something. I think it's really smart to acquire rentals that way. If I had to, we have a lot of kids now, and I'm really tempted. The house that I currently live in is going to make a phenomenal rental property. So we're about to have our 4th kid in about 15 days or less. So now is a bad time for me to try to convince my wife that we should move because of how awesome of a rental our house that we live in would make. But I definitely think this is probably, if I didn't know anything and I started over, I would acquire as many rentals as I possibly could in this way that you're describing. I think that's the way to go. Yeah, thanks. We hear about the pros of renting and how much money you can make, but do you have any horror stories you're willing to share where you had to get lawyers involved with a tenant? Not yet. Knock on wood. I don't have any horror stories of that. And I definitely think that the pros of renting, because of how much money you can make, is really blown out of proportion. I mean, if you factor in taking proper care of these properties, cash flow is probably the most talked about and it's the most sought after reason for getting into rental properties. But I don't think that enough people talk about how little of that cash flow you're able to keep because of capital expenditures. And this is the reason that in all of these videos, I do not include capital expenditures or repairs and maintenance in my calculation, is because I don't acknowledge them to be real numbers, because capital expenditures don't care about how much percentage you budget for them. So you can sit here and predict the monthly cash flow and how much money you're going to make all you want to. But CapEx is going to laugh at you when the roof decides to go. As soon as I get as soon as I get 10,000 subscribers and I can sell that merchandise, I really want to sell things that say CapEx don't care, because a lot of these investors and like pro real estate people, and I do my best not to be guilty of it, but talk about how much cash flow you make. And I retired after I got a portfolio of 40 properties. No, I don't think so, because the cash flow that you're expecting can be wiped out by a few capital expenditures that need to be taken care of. So, and then let's say you do have good reserves. Well, your reserves still took a giant hit. Now, don't get me wrong, we're only talking about cash flow here. Over the long term, between the appreciation, the principal pay down, the tax benefits, and the cash flow, you're definitely going to make a lot of money. But the appreciation and the principal pay down, those don't pay your bills. The tax benefits, they don't pay your bills. The cash flow is the only thing that has the potential of paying your bills, and that gets stolen from you by capital expenditures more often than these people that talk about how they retired off having 40 or fewer rental properties acts like. So I think that's the horror story. I think the real horror story of this is, hey, I was sold this dream where I get 10 rental properties and now I don't have to work except for on my terms. I don't think that is remotely realistic. I hope that doesn't burst any bubbles. And I would like to follow that up by saying real estate investing is definitely the right thing to do. I just hate how people act like they retire. Who wants to retire anyway? Here's one for you. You only get to pick one of these two offers. Da, 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 da. Lewis put me on a game show. Buy a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, single-family home for $32,000 in cash, or buy a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, single-family home for $69,700 with 20%. With 20% down, equal in size and age, but you're doing the 1% rule. And they're going to rent for the same amount of money. They're in the same market. What's 20% of 69,700? See, up until now, I had you all tricked. You thought, man, that Ryan, he could just do math without calculators while he's in front of his whiteboard. The truth comes out. 69,700 times 0.2, $13,940. Let's see here. 69,700 times 0.8. 55,760. Let's call it 55,800. What is the monthly payment on $55,800? It would be cool if I could put my phone's screen up here, but I can't do that. 55,800. You didn't say this. Let's assume it is a 25-year loan at 5%. So that's $326 a month. So let's say that they rent out. Oh, so it's a 1% rule. A 1% rule, Lewis. That means 1%. You're renting this property out for $320 per month. I did too much math for your question. Look at this. Everybody but Lewis is confused and doesn't want me to spend any more time on this. So $327 is how much the mortgage payment on the $69,700 property would be with 20% down. So let's just bump it up. Can we say, I'm gonna scroll down and see new comments. CapEx really don't care. You're right. I can't wait to put that on some mugs and t-shirts. CapEx don't care. I bought 30 properties and now I'm retired forever. CapEx don't care about your thought about retirement. So if it's rented out for $800 a month, after your payment, you're making $473. But you only put down $13,700 to make $473 compared to putting down $32,000 and making $800. I would pick the leverage. Long-term leverage always wins, even if the price is a little bit higher. So, yeah. In this hypothetical scenario, Lewis, I would purchase the one that has the leverage attached to it. I wanted to convert a spare living room and garage into a studio apartment, but my local law says it has to be 600 square foot minimum. I'm at 530 square feet. They said I would have to file a variance. What is it? What is a variance? I guess a variance is an exception, perhaps. A living room and garage into a studio apartment. Man, that's creative. That's really cool. I don't know. 70 square foot. I have no idea how to help you. Was that too cold? I have no idea how to help you. Oh, that's funny. Thank you for passing on your knowledge. I'm a 21-year-old college student looking to make rental properties my future. Should I be looking for a foreclosure or a higher cap away from the city? Both, probably. I would definitely say that foreclosures, anytime you have the opportunity to buy a property at a discount because of the deferred maintenance that's attached to it, because of its location, any variable that you're able to take positive control of is going to equal money in real estate investing. So the majority of people, when they see a house that looks really bad, they want to run away from it and sell it at a discount. And generally, how bad the property looks is much more dramatic than it actually is. And because of that, properties are generally discounted more than they probably should be because of how bad the properties look. So there's really a lot of room and a lot of margin to make a fortune in real estate investing by becoming the type of person that can take a horrible looking property and make it great again. So you're going to have like your sweat equity in that. And it's, you really benefit the community. And I think it's a really cool feeling to take a property that has been vacant for a decade and put a family in it again. I think that feels great. And I think that is where big equity comes from. So if you're able to get big equity and a high cap rate, then I definitely think that is what you should do. The things that can't be answered in this question are, the area. Because it's a high cap rate, does that mean that the crime is actually higher there? I don't know. Like, I'm really good friends with a Dayton cop. Dayton is where all my rental properties are, and he thinks Dayton is the worst place ever. But all things considered, where these low price homes are, the crime rate really isn't that bad. It's not like you hear about higher cap rates in other cities, but you can't get tenants to pay and everybody's getting evicted every other day. That's not the way it is around here. CapEx really don't care. Such a good question. Look at yourself, man, giving yourself a pat on the back. Congratulations on the upcoming newest edition. Thank you. You people need to ask some more questions. Post your questions in the chat. If you got any questions, let's hear them. Let's hear them, because I'm approaching the end of these. A variance is a special permission granted by the locality to create a structure not within the current zoning or code standards. Nice, Amy Evans. Thank you for doing that. So, I mean, I hope you can get the variance for your 70 square feet. If I were the person coming out to your property to either approve it or not approve it, I would not disapprove it over 70 square feet. But unfortunately, I'm not the person that's going to be making that. I would try it, and I would weigh the costs of what does it look like. Is there an area that I could add 70 feet? If it is a garage, is there like a man door that you can add a 70-foot utility room, 70-foot square foot utility room on the other side of that man door? Is there 70 square foot of your house that is closely attached to the living room that you could also include in the garage / living room? This is the cool thing about real estate investing, right? You can get so incredibly creative with everything. So surely there has to be a way. We're at the tail end of things. What are we going to do? I can't believe we've already been live for an hour. That makes sense that questions are starting to slow down. Man, when I'm talking, time flies. I can't believe I've been talking for an hour. When we did this for 3 hours last week, my voice was definitely a little bit raspy for the rest of the day. So let's see if any more questions come through. In the meantime, I think all of the 5 things that I wanted to point out about how to buy your first rental property were already answered. You skip questions sometimes. Mine's twice. I don't know. So this might be an issue with StreamYard. Let me open this up in the YouTubes and let me see if there are comments coming through, because I have been extraordinarily thorough. California. So this is the last thing that I have seen you ask, Miranda H. Diaz. You skip questions sometimes. I can do this. Let me turn off my volume on the computer machine. Yeah, so now I'm over here in YouTube looking at the comments, and I still don't see your question. Let's you know what? Let's just take the blame off myself, and let's blame YouTube. Let's say that YouTube is the one that skips the question. Why have you not gone into multifamilies larger than 5 units and stopped doing 4 or less? So this is a good question. I like this question a lot. The reason is there's 2 reasons. First, when I first started, I was around 8 properties right before I started using private money. And I partnered with an individual, and we sent a massive amount of mailers out to multifamilies. And all of the multifamilies at the time were around $30,000 per unit, and they still needed about $10,000 of work. So the market was suggesting that each multifamily unit, the retail was about $40,000 per unit. Whereas I could buy a single family home for about $25,000 and it needed no work. So when I tried to get into multifamily investing, it seemed like I got a much better bang for my buck doing the single family home. And as I continued to double down in single families and stop holding out for a larger multifamily unit, I started realizing that I had the ability to improve neighborhoods and communities uh, via single family home investing. If I owned, you know, let's say there's a hypothetical street that has 10 properties on it. If it was possible, because again, remember the market I'm in Dayton, the biggest issue that the city of Dayton faces, from my perspective, from a I'm not speaking for Dayton and its issues. I think the biggest issue that Dayton has are the number of vacant and abandoned homes from when the market previously turned, when GM and the manufacturers and all of that pulled out. Because Dayton was once a very poppin' place with the Wright brothers and the whole flight thing, like during the aviation thing. I like to consider it like the origin, like the Silicon Valley of the aviation age, right? Like we used to have the most patents of anywhere else in America. But as all of that started leaving, um, the homes were just abandoned. So if you have the ability to take these abandoned homes and bring them back up to speed, you are bringing up the value of the community in turn. And there's a lot of power in that. And in this hypothetical street that I mentioned, let's say there are 10 properties and I have the ability to control 5 or 6 of those 10, and I do a good job screening, and I have the ability to kind of make that an awesome area to live because of the rehab work that I've done, because I have done a good job screening, and it is a phenomenal person to live there. And then because the screening process is done well and the home's recently rehabbed, well, now let's say that that spins off and there's a phenomenal pride of ownership there. Well, the community has a phenomenal or that street at least has a good vibe to it because of all the pride of ownership. I could be wrong on this, but I don't know if you can achieve that same thing in apartment buildings that are like 5 or more units. I've never seen somebody build like a 200 unit apartment complex and then the community is just like, oh man, this is great for us. I could be missing something, but that's just my rudimentary answer to that question. Right now, I'm in the zone. I'm making money doing single family homes. I'm, in my opinion, doing a good job at this. So I would rather double down and keep doing the single family route and community building via single family homes. And here in Dayton, we have streets that have a lot of multifamily. So the same situation that I just painted, if you have a street of 4 units that are all individually owned, some of them ran and managed better than others, then you would have the same impact on the community if you were to bring those up to speed as well. The larger 5 up units generally are not owned by individuals. They're owned by one company and they either do a good job managing it or they don't. And rather than deviating from what I know and attempting to learn something else, I've just decided for the time being to double down on what I do know and continue charging hard ahead. Let's see here. Should I look at properties even if they are too far from where I live? How do you manage your properties? So my brother and I, about 4 or 5 months ago, took over property management, and that has been tons of fun. So we manage our properties. And should you look at properties if they are too far from where you live? I don't have the stomach to do out-of-state investing. I know a lot of other people do it. Javon, he was on here earlier, Javon Parker, he is only going to do out-of-state investing. And I've got a few insurance clients who do out-of-state investing very well. So I'm not so sure what you should do. It really depends on your risk tolerance and if you have the ability to handle everything appropriately. Do you have the ability to create a strong team of contractors and property managers that you trust? Do you, the part that I have seen go wrong in out-of-state investing are people pay too much for the properties and people don't have property managers that have their best interest in heart. So, and the contractors will kind of halfway do a job and then leave and say that it's done. And since the investor is out of state, there's no way for them to easily verify that. So if you can get around those things, then you could probably be a successful out-of-state investor. But this is not an area that I know of. The furthest property away from me that I own is 20 minutes. So I own one about 20 minutes south of where I live and one about 20 minutes north of where I live. So I'm pretty close to all of the properties that I own. I'm coming back to this. I'm hoping to, okay, yeah, I see it down below. YouTube, not blaming me. All right. Could you speak about which software you recommend for property management again? I have decided to use Appfolio. Now, Appfolio has like a 50 property minimum. So if you have less than 50 properties, you aren't able to use it. And the only reason that I decided on that is I asked all of the real estate investors that I know that have properties, that a similar number of properties that I do. And they all said that they use Appfolio, or if they didn't use Appfolio, Appfolio was going to be their next step. Let's see here. I've made progress. How do you go about putting up a deal for a loan with the bank on the foreclosure? I'm about to look at a few foreclosure properties. So this is difficult. I did a video about how to finance a foreclosure, and cash is always the best, that's for sure. And the reason is when you are buying foreclosures, there's only a few times where you actually have access to the interior. And banks generally want an appraisal to be done that includes an outside and interior inspection. And I use the term inspection loosely. I'm not talking about, how much life does the electric or the roof have left on it, or what kind of shape is the electric in. I'm talking about just an appraiser that is taking photos of the interior to judge just what type of overall condition is it in, and then also what type of condition overall is the exterior of the property in. So on foreclosures, you don't have a high likelihood of that being done because most times foreclosures, you don't have access to the interior until after you purchase it. So there are some hard money lenders out there that are willing to give you money to purchase a foreclosure. However, like I've mentioned before, the hard money loans have a bunch of fees and origination, whatnot, that I'm really not that comfortable with because it really adds up if you do a lot of quantity. But at the end of the day, I think in some situations, hard money is definitely worth it. I just haven't had to do it yet because I have also built a list of people that are interested in lending money on first position mortgages. So in putting up a deal for a loan with a bank, I would highly recommend purchasing the property in cash, rehabbing the inside of it, and then renting it out, and then approaching the bank looking for a loan on the property. Now, I get that that's capital intensive, and that is not as cool as purchasing a property with leverage from the beginning. But I think that is probably the best way and the cleanest way to get the best rate with a traditional lender. Now, I do know, and I have heard about ways that people buy foreclosures with like the FHA 203B, maybe. But I think those are like bank owned properties more than they are sheriff sale properties. And I don't know much about that because I haven't done it, because I think part of the FHA 203B loans is that you buy a property, you fix up the property, and then you live in the property. Does anybody else know anything that's on this about FHA loans? The FHA 203B program? Let me know, because I opened up a can of worms of which I'm not actually familiar with. Silly guy. All right, approximately how much is it to rehab a home, assuming you do not have to fix the roof? What a loaded question that is full of things that I know nothing about. So When I definitely know how to rehab a home. I'm just saying, like, it depends on the market. I know Ohio is cheaper to rehab properties than it would be in California because the demand. I know that rehab prices go up if there is something like a disaster, like when we had the tornado that came through here. Since contractors were so booked out, if you wanted anything to be done, the price was a lot higher. So it really depends on how much labor costs in your area. Here in Ohio, if you spent if you spend $25,000 on the home, then that should get you new flooring, new drywall, new kitchen, new baths, new paint. 25,000 in Ohio should redo everything on the inside of the property. Now, that does not include the mechanicals or the roof. So then you add the roof prices and the prices of the mechanicals. So if it costs $5,000 to put in HVAC and, around $1,000 or less to put in your water heater, then you're starting to get a more realistic picture. So I think about $50,000 if you do the roof and the mechanicals and the interior and any exterior. Now, one thing that I did not budget for appropriately when we started doing a bunch of these rehabs was the exterior. I greatly underestimated how much it would cost to redo siding, gutters, and landscaping on the properties that I've acquired that have been vacant for quite some time. So $50,000, 25-ish thousand dollars for just the interior. We do not manage other properties. We only manage our own. And this is a phenomenal distinction that I should always make, I think, because the paranoid former law enforcement guy in me who always wants to be above reproach, it is illegal for people that are not a realtor or broker to be a property manager. So I cannot manage anyone's properties other than my own because I do not have the proper licensure. So I only manage properties that I own. I have a few partnerships where I don't necessarily own 100% of the property, but I have an ownership stake in it. So I manage those too. But so long as you have an ownership percentage in the property, you can manage it. However, I would not be interested under any circumstances in managing other people's properties. I'm very confused at how property management is a sustainable business model solely managing other people's properties. I think if realtors manage other people's properties, now I should put my disclaimer back up because I'm speaking about things that I don't know about, but just from my experience and just trying to figure out how businesses work and how people make money, I don't know, especially when you're in an area, like if you're in a A-class area where the rents are like $2,000 plus, then property management makes a lot more sense because you have, let's say it's 2%, you're getting $200 a month to manage that property. $200 a month absorbs a good amount of time spent working with the tenant or addressing issues that that property might experience. But when you dial that $2,000 rent down to $500, $600, $700, we're talking about $50 to $80 a month per property. So we have properties. I think the lowest property that we have rented out is like $375. So even if we charge 10%, we're looking at $40 a month, rounding up to manage that property. So we have the ability to handle one or two service calls to that property, assuming that they last less than 2 hours before we start just entering the reds. So if you are in D, C, or low B class areas, I don't understand how property management is a sustainable business model unless you start nickel and diming people and charging boatloads of fees and like overrides on overseeing contractors. So if you are investing in a DC or B area, just be on the lookout for that and cognizant of that. And I think you're going to find yourself in a difficult position to be both respectful of the property manager's time and also demand the excellence that you would expect your portfolio to be treated with, because ultimately this is our vehicle to generate generational wealth. Those are my thoughts. All right. What's your question, Miranda H. Diaz, that I have skipped a few times? Are you still on here? Are you still about to ask a question that I missed? All right. Well, what do you say? Did we exhaust the questions for this week? Are we done? Are we done here? I'm still having the time of my life doing this. Here we go. Joseph Wilson. I knew you had come through. I had a sneaky suspicion that you were watching today. Who guided you through your first real estate investment transaction? Was your brother an integral part of your decision to enter real estate? My brother is an integral part of all decisions that I make. We spend probably 2 or 3 hours a day on the phone together. We did not get into real estate together. We individually came to investing in real estate. I bought my first rental property up here in August of 17. To answer the first part of your question, nobody really guided me through that transaction. I went through a realtor. I just moved to Ohio in April of 2017, so I didn't really know anybody, have any connections or any of that. The entire time between April and August of 17, I was commuting between Ohio and North Carolina. During that time, all I did was listen to real estate investing podcasts or videos or books. That's when I discovered Audible. Just because the amount of time that I spent in a car. So I would say that Bigger Pockets probably guided me through that process. As much as I don't want to send people there for answers, I think Bigger Pockets is definitely helpful. It creates a forum where investors have the ability to discuss issues with one another. So I definitely had a bunch of conversations on there and made a few posts. And then the realtor that I used to purchase the first property, he was also a real estate investor, and he was helpful in pointing me towards people that could be trusted here in the area to do like the inspections and all of that. But I purchased that property in cash, so I really only needed an inspector because we didn't get the property appraised. And then at the same time, my brother lives down in Jacksonville, Florida, so he could speak a lot more to out-of-state investing than I can, except he's biased because he has me up here that's actually going around doing things. So he might not be a good person to talk to either. And he bought a rental property down in Jacksonville, Florida at around the same time. So we just started gearing our conversations towards real estate investing a lot. And that's ultimately when we started talking about how in the world will we pay for all of our kids' college and real estate investing over the next, because at the time when we started, I think his son was 3 and he was the oldest. So we had 15 years before we needed to pay for the first kid's college. So we had a good head start. What is the first step as a beginning? Education and networking. So those are the first 3. So just to recap the 5 things, it is definitely figuring out why you want to get started in real estate investing. And I think you need to figure out an overarching why just in your overall life. Like, what is it that you want to accomplish with your life, and how does real estate investing fit in this picture? Because if you are just looking to real estate investing to make an extra $500 per month, then you're going to be very upset when capital expenditure really rear its ugly head. So you want to figure out a why that is bigger than your actions. And that way, when things get tough, you can still actually focus on what it is that you're trying to accomplish long term. The second thing that you need to do is educate yourself, consume as much real estate investing information that you possibly can. I am not a fan of people just deciding that they want to get into it and jumping into it without reading any books. So my kind of MO or modus operandi, if you will, anytime I'm interested in branching out into something new, I do my very best to read a minimum of 10 books on that topic. Now, sometimes it's very difficult to come across 10 books on any given topic. So at that point, you just have to start talking to professionals and whatnot. Recently, when I was trying to get into something, I couldn't find 10 books that had been published on it. But once you've read 10 books in one area, then you're going to be able to start really picking up on the patterns. And you're going to realize that the books are starting to repeat themselves. And whenever you notice that, that's when you're truly kind of gaining a firm understanding of the new topic that you're looking into. And because real estate investing is so broad, I would say pick an area. So if you want to do multifamilies, read 10 books on multifamily investing. If you want to be a note investor, read 10 books on notes. If you want to be a single family home investor, do that. But make sure that they're all similar in nature. So you don't want to read 10 books, 2 about tax foreclosures, 2 about single family homes, 2 about multifamilies. I don't think that would accomplish what I'm speaking of. So once you do that, you're able to make your own educated opinions. And then you would be able to actually contribute to the third thing, which would be networking. And when you are networking, you want to surround yourself with as many like-minded people as you possibly can. So I don't know this for certain. Some people are very blessed with the network that they're born into. But if you desire greater things for your life, then I have a sneaky suspicion that the people you surround yourself with on a daily basis probably aren't on the same wavelength, because you have a tendency to be the average of, let's just say, the 5 people that you spend the most amount of time with. So if you're desiring greater things, that probably means that the average of the people that you're hanging out with isn't the best. So you're definitely going to want to go above and beyond to surround yourself with like-minded people that are interested in accomplishing the same things that you are. So whatever you want to accomplish, let's look back to step number 1, which is establishing that overarching why for your life. Take that and then try to find people that have similar long-term goals and surround yourself with them. Learn from them, share ideas with each other, figure out how to add value to that new group, and learn as much as possible from that new group. And at this point, I think you have done all of the prep work that you could possibly do. So you know why, you have researched it endlessly, you've read 10 books, you're practically an expert on this, and you have started looking for and surrounding yourself with the upcoming people. I mean, the right types of people. So at this point, number 4 is execute. So once you have the appropriate amount of information and network around you, you really need to start doing rather than listening and talking about. So I think this is the appropriate time to pull the trigger. Now, whenever you pull the trigger, expect to make mistakes, but you have already laid the appropriate foundation for yourself as far as education and network. So the mistakes that you do make are going to be extraordinarily limited, but nonetheless, you should most certainly be expecting to have made some serious mistakes. So I think the first deal is all about becoming the man in the arena, becoming a doer, not just this like academic or talking head figure, because so many people get trapped in this like analysis paralysis thing where they have all the information they need, but they're too scared to make a mistake and they never pull the trigger. So I'm encouraging you to, only after you figure out why, you have done your research and you have surrounded yourself with decent people, to then go and actually start executing. And when you are executing, because you have done the first 3 steps, you are going to be able to do the 5th thing very well. And that is just pivot each time you realize that you have made a mistake, and do your best to learn from your mistakes and move along as you go. So after being in a bunch of groups where there are like-minded people and we are all striving after making ourselves and our lives better and designing the lives that we want for ourselves, I have seen a lot of people try things and they not work. And rather than trying to rough it out or, unnecessarily work at it, they pivot and they either sell that business, fold that business, and start something else. Similarly, I think, constantly pivoting, learning from your mistakes, and evolving is the 5th step. So The fourth step is when you're going to buy your first rental property. And the fifth is just this lifelong learning experiment where you need to constantly reflect on your why and make sure that as you're executing, everything always aligns with the big picture story that you have created for your life. So when you're 60, when you're 70, and you look back on your life, you want the first thing, your overarching why, to be so big and so awesome that when you get to that point, you're like, you know what, my life was worth it because the entire time I tried. I showed up day after day and worked towards this thing. The goals that I set for myself at the beginning, I felt were so impossible. But now, after showing up every day, I was able to achieve it. My entire life was worth it. So it's the number fifth, the five step. You just constantly have to pivot, reflect on your why, reflect on your proper education, reflect on the group that you're surrounding yourself with, because there's nothing more awesome than surrounding yourself with a group of people like, wait, you want to do what? Well, let's get it done. Let's go do it. Not man, you can't do that. That's impossible. You're never going to have any success there. Nobody likes those people. Don't surround yourself with those people. Always look to encourage everyone, provide value everywhere you possibly can, and surround yourself with people who are like-minded, who are also looking to encourage and provide value to you. So those are the five things. Was that a good answer? Righteous Realtor. Did you like that? And that was the whole premise of the video. So now you know everything that I do. Oh, Clyde Lovelady. Man, you are one of the first people that commented on my YouTube channel that I had no concept of who they were. So I'm really excited to see your name again. This is really cool. What is the minimum length of time before you can enter the refinance stage in doing a BRRRR? This is on the last live stream. I went to great lengths to talk about how much I dislike BRRRR, because I think this is the most tricky part of BRRRR. I think this is when people make it seem a lot better than it really is. I don't like calling what I do the BRRRR method because I don't agree with the marketing that's behind it. But nonetheless, I think the banks require either no seasoning, or some require up to like 18 months of seasoning. So it really depends on what bank you're working with and what their current appetite is. Because what we have noticed is, so when we first started, we bought a few foreclosures, we fixed them up, we put renters in there, and then we refinanced. And when we refinanced, at the time we were working with one bank, and they originally had no seasoning requirement. So we thought everything was awesome. So as soon as we got it rented out, we sent them the lease, and they refinanced the property based on the appraised value. Well, after we did a few of those, they kind of changed their appetite, not just with us, but with everybody that they lent to. And now they said, okay, well, it's 6 months seasoning. So then that just delayed us a little bit. Still the same bank. And then they switched to 12 months, and then eventually 18 months. And again, this isn't a me thing. This was their standard, and they were a local credit union. So it really depends on the bank. And I definitely think one of the most powerful things that you can do if you are interested in real estate investing in this way is form a phenomenal relationship with a smaller local credit union where you can go in and talk to the vice president of commercial lending. Now, that sounds a lot more serious than it is, because these smaller banks that you go to, almost everybody except the tellers at the counter are titled vice president of something. So there's probably even a teller behind the counter that is vice president of customer relations. 6, 12, 18 months to answer your question. And thanks, man. I'm so pumped that you're actually still on here and listening to little old me. How fast, in your opinion, is it to acquire your first property? How fast can you get through those first 3 things? How fast can you formulate your why for your life? How fast can you read 10 books? And how fast can you surround yourself with like-minded people? After you do that, I think you're good. And I've got a good friend of mine, a very good friend, and he's a lone wolf. He does everything himself, and he does not like taking advice from anyone. He is successful in his own right. He does a really good job, But the only reason that I'm putting so much emphasis on those first three things is it drastically shortens your learning curve. So if you have read 10 books, then you are less likely to make mistakes. You are likely to be more educated, and you are likely to be able to pivot faster. If you are surrounding yourself with similar like-minded people, then you have this feedback channel or loop that you're creating with yourself that you can knock ideas around with other individuals, and you are able to problem solve before you even realize that something may or may not be a problem. So you're going to, again, be able to pivot faster. So my buddy who's a Lone Ranger, he is successful in his own right, but it seems like he progresses so much slower than if he were to be involved in like a group of like-minded individuals that are actually helping him to reach his goals. Because at a certain extent, you're only one person, and you can only accomplish one person's worth of work any given day. But if you are able to build on the experience and the knowledge of others, then you're able to really go a lot faster. But hey, if you're not trying to go fast, then it doesn't really matter, I suppose. Was wondering if after you fix up and rent out the home, when you refinance with a bank, do they lend you 70% on the seasoned rent rolls, or do you have to have a W-2 to prove your income? This is a phenomenal question. So not 70% of the rent rolls. I would say the loan amount is off the appraised value of the property. Now, I think I know what you're referring to. I can't think of it at the moment. I think we're talking about two different things right now. So you're talking about income to qualify for repaying the loan. So I recently went through this when we were buying our home, because they were only wanting to count 70% of our rental income to see if I could afford my personal residence. This is what you're talking about. I just figured it out. Okay, so I think this is tricky, and I think this is a time thing. So the W-2 is often the easiest because it is predictable, and for the most part, it is out of your control. So if you are a W-2 employee, sometimes banks, once they see your first or second pay stub, then they're likely to give you a loan for personal usage off of that income. And if you are just starting in the rental space, then they will not count the rental income that is going to be generated from that property, but you would qualify for that loan based on your personal income from your W-2 job. And they would use the new loan amount and kind of do your debt to income ratio. Now, this is when I get super thankful for my brother, and I kind of wish that he was on the call, because once you have had a business for longer than 2 years, they do not do like your normal residential loan debt to income anymore. They do something, I think it's called debt service coverage. And this is where my brother is a whiz and I know very little about. So this is the world that my brother lives in. He is a mortgage officer, and he handles pretty much all of the conversations between the bank and our refinances. So this is not a space that I'm grossly familiar in, but I know that all of our loans now are based on the income of the business and not our personal incomes. But after a while, they're kind of the same thing, because I don't have a W-2. I don't have any pay stubs. And the way that I pay myself is removing money from the business. So I do my very best to remove as little money as possible. Man, I hope that answered your question. How soon after the rehab can you enter the refinance stage? Pretty much immediately, depending on the bank that you are using and the relationship that you have with the bank. We started one refinance process. We weren't even done with the rehab, but we went ahead and leased out the property. So we showed somebody a 60% complete property, and they're like, sure, I'll live here when it's done. So we got a signed lease. And as soon as we got that signed lease, we sent it over to the bank, and the refinance process started. Now, ideally, what we were hoping, while we had our fingers crossed when we did that, is when the appraisal was ordered and whenever the appraiser showed up, we would be completed with the property. Fortunately, that turned out okay, and we didn't get caught holding the bag for the appraisal fee, him coming out there and seeing a total mess. So it really depends. Here we go. Jackson experiment. As a newbie on my way to my first deal, do you think sharing what I've learned so far via YouTube is a good idea, or should I wait till I get my first deal? After learning, I want to share it with everyone. Man, if everybody thought like this, the world would turn a lot smoother. If you are not familiar with a lady named Lily Thompson, she has a YouTube channel. And when I first saw her channel, we were about the same size, and she has since blown up and I have not. So she is doing a lot of things more right than I am. And she is new. I think she has one property, and that's the one that she lives in, that is a duplex, and she's house hacking it. Other than that, she is documenting her entire journey. And her whole thing is she doesn't feel the need to be an expert and have all the answers, because she's learning as she goes. And she is, I mean, really just keeping everybody tuned in and clued in to like every move that she's making. And it's really cool. It's really cool to watch. She does a bunch of live streams as well. So if you're not familiar with her, or if you want some motivation to actually start your YouTube channel and kind of showcase your learning process and how you're getting started, I think that would be awesome. And I'm really interested in seeing, I don't know. I mean, just collectively as a society, the people that are on YouTube that are sharing their experiences are a younger demographic. So I'm really interested to see the long-term consequences that us hopping on here and sharing things that we have no idea about has on society. And even if it doesn't have any impact on society, I am most certainly looking forward to being able to have all of this video footage of, because even though we have 80 or some properties, we're still early on in the process, just like you are. And I'm really looking, like when my kids are old enough, like, 18 or whatever, and they have this giant backlog of footage that they can watch of me explaining what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, why I'm doing it. I think that's really cool. And I think that's really powerful. So let's say that somebody on YouTube hits it big and they have documented their entire journey. And that person that has documented their entire journey becomes like a billionaire. Well, that's a rare thing. There's only like 2,000 of them in the whole world. How cool would it be to be able to watch this entire evolution, like this person evolve into being a billionaire? I think that'll be awesome. So I definitely think you should start sooner than later. And I mean, I wish that I did, because a lot of these questions that you guys are asking me, like, well, I don't have any friends or family that will lend money. I didn't either. It's not like I'm a silver spooned kid that had this massive network of people. I mean, this all happened recently, but I didn't document that. So everybody thinks that I'm hiding something that I'm not. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for what you're about to do. I think documenting things is going to be awesome. Where do you find neighborhoods that are growing and good monthly rent? I mean, I think this is a personal preference. I think it really comes down to what you're comfortable with. I would say spend a day in the neighborhood that you think you want to invest in and figure out how it feels. A lot of people look at metrics like population growth and new businesses created, and there are a lot of things that you can look at to sort of kind of be indicative of if an area is going to grow or not. And I'm not so sure if there are any companies. I think, man, I can see their logo. It's like a cloud, and they put out tons of realtor data. It starts with a C. I don't know, but they have tons of data about things like this. Something in Wakefield, Cushman and Wakefield, I believe. They have tons of data that they put out about stuff like this. You might want to look at stuff like that if you care, but I mean, single family homes, it's real about I mean, having a pulse on the heartbeat of the neighborhood by spending a week or 2 weeks there, spending the majority of your time in your day, picking up on what traffic is really like. And I was in law enforcement, so that's all I did was spend time in a police car driving around neighborhoods. So perhaps I don't see how, perhaps just through that experience, I've got the ability to see things differently than other people do. But I don't think that's the case. I mean, I really just think it's a matter of sitting in the car, watching the area and figuring out if it's a place that you would like to put money in or not. So there are definitely places in Dayton that I would not invest in and I would stay far away from. And then there are areas that I don't. And I think the good rents, like the pride of ownership, is the biggest thing that I look at when I'm driving through a community. How many people, how many homes have flower beds that are well kept? How many yards just look super well manicured? I mean, the pride of ownership has very little to do with the values of the home. You can find a $30,000 home that has pride of ownership, and you could find a $500,000 home that the yard is just wrecked. So, I mean, it's very indicative of how organized and well put together is the person that lives there. Those are the things that I would look at. After the rehab stage, how soon can you drop the hard money loan and refinance? That is also dependent on the terms of the loan that you have. I would definitely look at, while you are finding a loan, the prepayment penalties. So some of the loans that I have like 12-month prepayment, to where if I refinance inside of the 12-month window, then I have to pay like an additional penalty. And I don't normally mind that if they're reasonable, because I do my very best to make sure that everybody gets at least 12 months of interest if it's like an interest only payment. So I would definitely make sure to check the hard money loans and how often, how much it is, and if it seems reasonable. But in theory, you shouldn't really agree to any loan that has a prepayment penalty if your plan is to refinance it really quickly. But you should also be realistic. And I would say if you think you could rehab a property within 30 days, it'll probably take 90. So a 3 or 6 month prepayment penalty might not be so hateful. Just entered the contract on my first property to rehab buy and hold. It needs a lot of work, but no obvious major issues. Should I get an inspection? That is really up to you. If it's your first property and you're not familiar with looking for the major issues, then perhaps. And I mean, I think that's kind of a return thing. So in this stage, inspections can be used for two things. It can help you budget how much you're going to need to fix. It's going to highlight some things that you may have not seen about the property. And then the other thing that you could do with an inspection report is negotiate the purchase price. So let's say you have this property under contract for 50 grand and the inspection reveals that the roof only has 2 years of life. Then you can say, look, the roof is about to go. Or let's say that there's a Federal Pacific electric panel in the property, and that's going to be like 2 grand. It's like, well, I was going to pay 50 grand for this property, and I think that's a fair price, but it needs $5,000 worth of work immediately. How about we split the difference, and you take 47,500, and I'll pay the other $2,500 worth of work that needs to be done. So I have definitely used inspection reports as a tool to negotiate the purchase price on the contract in a fair way. And then I've also used it because when I first started, I got every property inspected because I had no idea how to look at things or what to look for. But after getting like 5 or 6 inspections done, and meeting the inspector out there each time and really just kind of being attached to his hip while he did those things and like read all the things that he pointed out, well, slowly I was able to look for these things myself, right? So when I go into a property, I've got a little checklist of things that I would like to look at. Hope that makes sense. Aha, I have you fooled. I have never stopped working, and real estate investing is not my full-time job. Tricky Ryan Ingram. I make money from my insurance agency. I own an insurance agency, and I write insurance for other real estate investors. That pays for all my monthly expenses. I do not take any money out of this real estate investing gig. So we reinvest all of the money. When we took over property management, we started paying ourselves a little bit out of the management fees that we recaptured. But as far as the the rents, I mean, they just get put right back into properties to either make them better or acquire new properties. So I have not made real estate investing my full-time job. Insurance is my full-time job. And now YouTube. I'm allowing myself to act like a full-time YouTuber. I try to put out videos every day, but I fall short. I fall short. This is encouraging. This is tons of fun. And we have gone about 2 hours, and I am at the end of these questions. Who's got some more questions? We've gone from like 20-something people watching to 16. So you guys getting tired? You guys got some more questions? You guys it's been fun. I think this is a good one. This question makes me so happy. Thank you for asking this. It's so funny what a day actually looks like for me and what you think it is. I guess I do spend a lot of time on real estate investing and thinking about it. But yeah, a lot of insurance. Alrighty then. I made this cat video. I was working on my editing skills, and the last time I had to use the restroom in the middle of this live stream. So I thought to myself, I should make a little video, work on my editing skills, and merge a lot of different videos together. See how awesome I could make it. I tried to upload it, but I didn't have any luck. So no cat video for you guys today. I have a question. All right. Is it a good time to buy and rehab property in Ohio during the winter? I would be convinced there would be delays considering the weather and holiday season coming. This is one thing that really caught me off guard when I moved to Ohio, because in North Carolina, where I previously lived, if it were to snow like it does here in Ohio, we would be in like a state of emergency for the entire winter. Ohio has higher taxes, and I'm convinced it is because the extraordinary work that they do to these roads during winter season. So I would say the first time it snows is pretty rough. It's and people are getting acclimated to snow being on the roads again. And then I would say if there's a surprise snow, then it's pretty rough. And if the street maintenance guys didn't go out and like prep the roads the night before because no one expected it to snow, those are times it gets pretty rough. Other than that, it's business as usual. And comparing a winter to wherever you are that made you ask this question, which is a good one, and comparing to how winter is treated here, it's apples and oranges. So a lot of times, you know, when I was growing up in North Carolina, you had these people from the north that were just like, oh, nobody can drive in the snow down here. It's just like, well, I don't know about that. And then after moving to this thing, I mean, I don't know if North Carolina has any salt trucks at all. And I have seen them like 4 trucks wide here in Ohio, taking care of the roads, plowing it, salting it, and all of that. So it's apples and oranges. Driving on the road after the road crew is used to taking care of everything. I mean, it's no different than driving on the roads now. It's just a lot colder out. And then exterior work, of course, stops. It's really hard to work on a roof when there's snow on the roof. But other than that, I mean, the contractors, they still want to work because they still have to make money. It's just really focused on the interior. I think I shared in one of the videos how we are repairing the concrete on the exterior. We've kind of passed the point where we can do that because the way that we fix it, it needs, you know, warm weather and whatnot. So we're going to have to wait until next year to address that issue. But as far as rehabbing an interior of a home, you know, propane heaters or the furnace really make it to where people can work on the insides of homes and do things, because everybody still has needs, even when there's snow on the ground. So I definitely think it's still a good time to buy and rehab properties. And I've also gotten this question a lot as far as like tenants moving during the winter season. And again, I think the first few weeks of it being really cold in Ohio, that might slow everyone down. But after a while, it seems like we all get used to it and don't really let it slow up our normal way of living. How does the insurance gig work? Sounds interesting, and it seems like it helps you with investing as well. It sure does, man. And I did a goal video recently where over the next 3 years, I'm going to try to help 3 people also achieve financial freedom via insurance, property and casualty insurance sales. So I actually tried to record a video recently talking about that because I definitely think I stumbled upon this and I had a lot of things go right. But property and casualty insurance is like the original residual income. So once you build up your book of business or your client base to a certain size, so long as you keep those people happy, you're going to get the same amount of money year over year. So when I got started in insurance, when I left law enforcement and moved up here, I originally started selling life insurance. Life insurance is like flipping a house. You get paid a lot more, but you only get paid once. So even though I was making a decent amount of money on a monthly basis, I found myself not being able to sleep at night because I had no idea where my money was going to come from the following day. And every day I had to wake up and I had to work harder uh, or the same amount of uh, intensity day over day in order to continually make money. So then I was introduced to the property and casualty side of things where I get this book of business that's relationship based. I get to work with some of my greatest friends. And so long as I keep them happy and service them well, then I'll get paid a lesser amount, but the same amount every year. So let's say, uh, you know, I sell $50,000 worth of insurance premiums this month. Then next November, it will be just like I sold $50,000 worth of insurance premiums next November as well. As each of those policies renew, I get the same amount of money. So in essence, property and casualty insurance has allowed me to kind of unplug this whole time for money issue. So I think you're right. I think property and casualty is the way to go. And because I've unplugged this time for money issue, I get to give you guys the illusion that I do real estate investing full time. Oh. At what number will you and your brother start living off of your properties? I don't know. Because and this is cool. I mean, neither of us have the desire to work less. So everything that I know about business is when you're building a business, it's always best to put the proceeds of the business back into the business. Whenever you start taking money from the business, you're kind of choking the business's ability to grow. So we have talked about giving ourselves the flexibility of, I wish I had this book in front of me. The book is called Profit First. And one, because of the whole like choking the business, if you take too much money from it, a lot of business owners don't take the appropriate amount of money from their business. So there's this book called Profit First, which really walks you through how to take money from your business while also still allowing it to grow. So I don't know. I mean, I think that is a question that is part of the problem that I think real estate investing and the way people portray real estate investing is. So it's not like we're unhappy doing what we're doing. It's not like we want to work less. So since we're building these businesses, it's not a matter of how much money do we want to pay ourselves. It's just a matter of like how much money are we comfortable taking from the business and still growing. Now, if the question is like when will we stop growing the business? I don't know. We haven't talked about that because as we continue to make more money, and since I've mentioned to you guys, we're really community based. Now we're starting to transition from, okay, if we're good from a financial perspective, how can we utilize and leverage all of our resources at hand to continually have impact on other investors, the neighborhoods, and in the video that I made about the mastermind and my goals at this point, I mean, I'm good. My cup is full. I don't need to make any more money to be any happier. I am confident in my ability to take care of my family and all of that. So that is why I'm doing this live stream approaching 2 hours, is because at this point, my interest is having the most amount of impact on you all. Now, sure, if my money were to increase, I would perhaps, enjoy it. But that's not my driving motivation anymore because just fundamentally my cup is full. So now we're looking at having impact. and how can we help other people achieve what it is that we have. So working less doesn't really appeal to us. Working differently does, and not less. Oh, hey, look at that. I accidentally already answered that question. Great minds, great minds. Were there specific books to read as the 10 or just any 10 real estate books? Yeah, so no, not any specific books. I would say whatever it is that you want to focus on. So like real estate investing is broad. If you are dead set on investing in apartment buildings, you should read 10 books on investing in apartment buildings. If you want to invest in, strip malls, then you should try and find 10 books on owning and operating strip malls. So whatever niche you want to explore in real estate investing is the 10 books that you should read. Like when I first started a business, I read 10 books on how to market a business on the internet because I knew nothing about social media, because since I was in law enforcement, I didn't have any social media. So I had to learn all about it. And I'm looking at the Midwest for long distance investing, and your brother already in Dayton. How'd you decide on Dayton? Well, I moved here to Dayton. So I took a job selling life insurance here in Dayton. And when I was in law enforcement, I was in Durham. And in Durham, when I first started working there, you could buy any home for like $5,000 or $10,000 in the not so good area. And now when I left that police department, you couldn't even buy one of the condemned homes for less than $100,000. So I saw the city get really intentional on building up that area, improving the community, and all of that. So when I moved up here, I saw things that were similar, and I saw the city trying just as hard to improve even the worst parts of their city. So because the city was trying so hard, I was really comfortable in putting my money here as well. Yeah, thank you so much. This is awesome. I've enjoyed this so much. So, again, we're on hour 2. This is awesome. I really hope this is helpful to everybody from all the thank yous I've got. I have a sneaky suspicion that it was. I'm a huge fan of answering all of these questions. I don't know of any place online. I'm not saying I'm like, revolutionary or anything, but I definitely think when I was learning about real estate investing, it would have been very helpful if I had the ability to reach out to somebody that was doing this online and talking about it and ask a few questions. So that's kind of my motivation behind making myself available every Friday morning at 8 a.m. So I'm going to plug myself here a little bit, and we just started a mastermind group. I did a video about it yesterday. There's the link I just shared to the application. If you have any desire at all to surround yourself with like-minded people that are also chasing after 30, 40, 50-year goals and making themselves a better person and building your portfolio and just creating generational wealth, then let's talk about it. That group is $300 a month. So if you had sticker shock, don't worry about it. It's not necessarily for everybody, but I think for the value that it's offering, for the type of insight that you're going to get, it's probably underpriced. So there are groups that are similar that are charging probably double and triple that on a monthly basis. So it's an hour long every week. We are going to get together and talk about all of these things. We're going to hold each other accountable. We're doing the 12-week year. So we're going to get our big picture goal. We're going to break it down into like daily, weekly activities that we can execute on a daily basis. And once a week, we talk about these things, make sure that we're actually making progress. And then every week, there's going to be about 30 minutes for what's called a hot seat, where you bring your either personal or professional issues, and the group will give you feedback so you can kind of collectively problem solve on the best course of action to fix these things. And then once per year, we're going to do like a live kind of retreat or a live in-person weekend here in Dayton. And I am paying for all of that. When you get here, all you have to do is show up to Dayton. So it's going to be tons of fun. I'm really excited about it. I joined one of these groups when I was about 3 years ago, and I'm still in it, and it's just absolutely changed my life. I would contribute so much of my success to that. So again, on the same terms of my brother and I not intending on working less, just working differently for impact rather than money, this fits right in. So that's what we're after. All right. We're up to 15 people now from 12 a few moments ago. So if you just hopped on and you have some sort of question that you want to ask, go ahead and post your question in the chat. That's all I'm doing, answering some questions and having this disclaimer up here, letting you guys know that I don't really know what I'm talking about. This thing is so delayed. There's like a 10, 15-second delay to it, I believe. So let me see if there's actually people asking questions here on YouTube. If not, we can probably call it a day. Yep, no questions. All right, well, check out seek-wisdom.com/join. Check out the video that I did recently on the Mastermind group, what it's all about. It's about 25 minutes long, but hey, if you guys made it this far, you're in for the long haul, right? Just surround yourself with like-minded men trying to, create the best possible lives for yourself. So check out that video. If it's of any interest to you at all, go ahead and apply. And I'm really looking forward to meeting everyone and learning more about you all. And I really am thankful for all of this stuff. Dude, congratulations. That's awesome. What were the numbers on it? What was the purchase price and the monthly rent, I guess? Are you doing a house hack? Is this just a rental property? What you got going on? I appreciate you, man. I'm really excited. It's always fun to have somebody else that's local that can kind of fact check me if I do something wrong or say something that's not true. I'm not trying to do that on purpose. Can I get a loan for like 2 to 300 million? It's a question. Hey, no's are free, man. And this one is this is the biggest, fattest free no that you've ever gotten. But hey, man, good job asking that question. What would you do with $300 million, man? That's a steep ask. That's the craziest thing about money is if you can come up with a $300 million idea, then hey, I could definitely help you find some funding for it. That's for sure. But when people are dealing with that kind of money, man, the presentations that you have to put together are pretty serious. But hey, $300 million a year, let's say you even make 5% off that. What is that? 300 million? It's 0.05. $15 million a year. I'd be down to make $15 million a year. All right, man. So you come up with something that we could do for $300 million that actually makes a decent amount of money, and we'll fund it. Thank you, man. I'm really looking forward to talking to you soon. It's so much fun actually putting the name to these crazy little usernames that you guys got. So, all right. So, Josh, I tried to hold out for you, man. I was hoping you'd share the numbers on your rental property because you're all excited about it. But congratulations nonetheless. And I look forward to talking to you guys all soon. Oh, there we go. It's a duplex, gutted down to the studs, new electrical, plumbing, HVAC, needs drywall, kitchen, and bath fixtures, paid $20,000, hoping for a $40,000 budget to finish, should get $750 per side. That is beautiful. Great job. That is a deal that I would do every day of the week. The math on that, the mental math is really easy. That's a phenomenal deal. Is this in the Midwest? I'm sorry if we've already talked before and I forget, but I don't think we have. But yeah, that's a great deal. $40,000 to finish. If it's already got new electrical, plumbing, and HVAC, I mean, the biggest thing is what? Paint, kitchen, bath, and the roof is good, I presume. That's awesome. Michigan. Yep. You can't beat it, man. You can't beat it. Yeah. Hey, man, that's the coolest thing about life that I'm learning is it's best to surround yourself with people that don't shut things down and say, hey, what do you want to build? Let's do it. Let's figure it out. I listen to too much Jim Rohn, and he says that all the time. Those are not my words. Those are his. Hey, what do you want to do? How big do you want it to be? Sure, we can get it done. Let's figure it out. That's the kind of person that I strive to be. And I mean, truly, there's easy ways to get $300 million if you have, especially, hey, if you had an idea that generates $300 million per year and you need $300 million to make it happen, who wouldn't do that deal? I guess anybody that doesn't have 300 million, but there's tons of people that have that much money out there. Hey, man. So, yeah, I appreciate it. I really look forward to talking to you guys next week. And hey, when I end this live stream here in a few seconds, if you want me to start doing this on Monday too, just let me know. I'm having so much fun doing this. If it's helpful, let's talk about it. Because Friday, I've been waiting all week for this. So this has been pretty exciting. I appreciate everybody. If you liked this live stream, you probably have watched a lot of my other videos, but if you haven't, check it out. I'm really looking forward to in the summer, I would not make you come up here in the winter months. I would hate to shock your California or Florida system. And my brother is going to be a part of this as well. So he's going to be, he becomes one of these people in the Snickers commercial if he has to do anything other than wear flip-flops. So he won't come up here in the winter. It'll be in the summer months for sure. I am an Indian. Congrats, man. Really interested in U.S. election. Man, I don't know. I don't have an opinion on this. That's funny. All righty, that was a good question to end this chat on. I appreciate you guys. I look forward to talking to you all soon. And thanks. Hey, focus this week on being the best person that you possibly can, and educate yourself on the real estate things and how to make money, because there's tons of money out there, and you can have as much of it as you want to, so long as you make money at the service of others, not at the expense, and really figure out how to make decent returns and a win-win for all parties involved. So thanks so much. I really look forward to talking to you guys soon.